You already know how this story ends. An asteroid hits. The dinosaurs die. You have known that since you were a child. Here is what almost nobody knows. There was a warning. It lasted 3 nights. Nobody has ever told you that because it changes the story. This was not a bolt from a clear sky. 3 nights before the end, a new star appeared. Faint, right at the edge of what an eye can see. It sat among all the other stars and looked like nothing at all. The next night it was brighter. The night after that, brighter again, and it did not twinkle. Every animal alive that week could have looked up and seen it. Millions of them probably did. Not one of them could read it. There was no one on this planet who knew what a moving light meant. That is the first thing that happened. Now here is the part that should not be possible. For 40 years we knew the day happened. We had the crater. We had the dust. What we did not have was the day itself. Nobody thought a single day could survive 66 million years. Then in 2019, a fossil bed in North Dakota was described. Fish, still whole, buried in a single afternoon, with glass in their gills. We are going to walk through that day, in order, from the last quiet second. Start with the sky. 3 nights out, the rock is 5.5 million kilometers away. That is about 15 times further than the moon. At that distance, it is barely a star. Then it closes. It is moving at 20 kilometers every second. At that speed, you could cross the Atlantic in about 5 minutes. On the final night, it passes the moon's orbit. Now it is as bright as Vega. Vega is one of the brightest stars in the sky, an unmistakable new light, hanging there, not twinkling. Here is where people get the story wrong. They imagine it arrived out of nowhere. A flash, then nothing. It did not. It was in the sky for days, getting brighter, and the world carried on. 30 minutes before the end, it stops being a point of light. It becomes a shape, a rock, turning. 60 seconds out, it is as wide as the full moon. 15 seconds out, 4 moons across. 5 seconds out, 12 moons across. And it is silent the entire way. Sound cannot outrun it. Now the ground. We know the season. That is the strange part. 2 separate teams read it out of fish bones. Robert De Palma's group published in 2021. Melanie During's group published in 2022. Both reached the same answer, independently. It was spring. The 2 teams then had a bitter public dispute. An investigation in 2023 found problems in how one result was presented. It did not overturn the answer. Both readings still say spring, so hold that picture. Northern spring, things growing, animals feeding. A completely ordinary morning, with a light in the sky that nobody could read. Now the moment itself. The asteroid is somewhere between 10 and 15 kilometers wide. Picture a mountain. Now put it in the sky. Moving. Here is the fact that reframes everything. Our atmosphere sounds enormous. It is not. Most of the air you will ever breathe sits in the bottom 10 kilometers. The rock was taller than that. Think about what that means. When the bottom of it touched the sea, the top of it was still in space. The rock did not fly through our atmosphere. It was too big to fit inside the air. The asteroid punched a hole straight through, and the hole stayed open behind it. For several minutes, there was a gap in the air above the Gulf of Mexico. Most people picture a collision, a crunch, a crater. That is not what rock does at this speed. At 20 kilometers a second, stone stops behaving like stone. It behaves like liquid. The seabed splashed. The energy released was about 100 teratons of TNT. That is roughly 10,000 times every nuclear weapon of the Cold War, at once. The hole it left is more than 180 kilometers across, wide enough that driving over it takes you most of a morning, and 20 kilometers deep, deeper than any point in any ocean. Nothing survived inside that circle, not the animals, not the plants, not the rock. There is no failed rescue for this stage. There is no shelter that works. For everything standing on that seabed, the story is already over. Everyone else on Earth is still fine. They have minutes. Some of them have hours. That is what the rest of this video is about. 2 minutes in, look up, not down. The crater is not a hole yet. It is a fountain. Rock that used to be seabed is now going straight up, not thrown sideways. Up. Some of it is moving fast enough to leave Earth completely, not falling back. Leaving, part of the seabed became a meteor. That material is in space right now. Some of it landed on the moon. Some of it is still out there, going. Meanwhile, the crater is doing something strange. You would expect a hole to stay a hole. It does not. The ground underneath rebounds, like the splash you get when a drop hits water. The center lifts up into a ring of mountains. Those mountains rise and then collapse in about 10 minutes. A mountain range with a lifespan shorter than a lunch break. We know this because we drilled into it. In 2016, a team led by Joanna Morgan and Sean Gillick drilled the crater. They pulled up a core of rock from that ring. The rock in that core is shattered and full of holes. It is the record of ground behaving like liquid. Here is what it means for anything alive. Everything that went up has to come down. That is the whole problem with the next stage. The energy did not stay in Mexico. It got loaded into millions of tons of rock and thrown at the sky. Gravity is about to hand all of it back, and it will not come back to one place. It will come back everywhere. An animal in what is now India is at this moment completely unharmed. It has about 8 minutes. 10 minutes in, now the sky starts to fail. All that thrown-up rock cooled on the way up. It cooled into droplets. Then the droplets hardened. Tiny beads of glass, most smaller than a grain of rice. There are trillions of them, and every one of them is now falling back into the air. Here is the part people miss. A single shooting star is a speck of dust. One speck burning up makes a visible streak across a whole sky. Now make it trillions, all at once, everywhere. Each bead heats the air it passes through. Multiply that by every bead falling on every part of the planet. The sky does not just glow. The sky becomes the heat source. Look up and you are looking at an oven ceiling. Robertson and colleagues modeled this in 2013. Their work described a pulse of heat radiating down from the whole sky, not from one direction. From above, uniformly, for hours. So what could you do? Shade does not help if the heat comes from everywhere overhead. But something under a rock ledge is fine. Something in a burrow is fine. Something in water is fine. Remember those three. They matter at the end. For everything standing in the open, this is the stage that kills it, not the impact, the sky. And the animal that survives it is not the strongest. It is the one that happened to be underground when the sky lit up. 13 minutes in, 3,000 kilometers north in what is now North Dakota, the ground moves. 3,000 kilometers is about London to Moscow. Nothing has been thrown that far yet. No wave has crossed that distance. So what arrived? The shaking. Earthquake waves travel through rock, and rock carries them fast. Faster than anything moving through air or water. So the first thing that reached inland North America was the planet itself, ringing. Here is the mistake almost everyone makes with this story. People assume a giant wave crossed the continent. It did not. There was no time. What happened instead is smaller and stranger. There was a river valley there, connected to an inland sea. The shaking hit that body of water, and the water sloshed in place, like a bathtub after you stand up in it. It surged up the valley, then came back down. A local wall of water with no ocean behind it. Just a violent slop, driven by the ground shuddering underneath. That surge picked up everything in the valley. Fish, trees, mud, whole animals. And it dumped them in one chaotic pile. Then it did it again on the way back. This is why the timing matters so much. Anything buried by that surge was buried within the hour. Not over years, not over seasons, in an afternoon, which means whatever it buried is a snapshot. And that is the only reason the next stage exists. 1 hour in, this is the stage that should not exist. The site is called Tanny's. It sits in the Hell Creek Rock of North Dakota. Robert De Palma and colleagues described it in 2019. What they found is a jumbled bed of fish, and the fish are still in one piece. Bones in the order they grew in. That alone is unusual. A body normally comes apart before it fossilizes. These did not. They were buried too fast to fall apart. But that is not the astonishing part. Remember the glass beads falling out of the sky. Some of those beads are inside the fish, lodged in the gills. Stop and think about what that requires. A fish only takes water through its gills while it is breathing. So the beads arrived while the fish was still alive. The sky was already raining glass, and the fish was still swimming in it. Then the surge came and buried it. We can even check the order of events. There is a gray line of dust that marks the boundary in rock worldwide. It is the layer that separates one world from the next. At Tanny's, the fish bed sits underneath that line. Below it, before it. The fish were buried before the dust had even settled. Now, the honest part. This site is argued about. Some researchers question how much of the story it can really carry. That argument is still running, and it should be. An extraordinary claim earns extraordinary scrutiny, but the fish are real. The glass in the gills is real. 66 million years later, we can read an hour. 2 hours in. Now the most famous claim about this day. You have almost certainly heard it. The whole world caught fire. Every forest on Earth burning at once. It is a spectacular image. It may also be wrong. Here is where it came from. If the sky radiates heat for hours, forests should ignite. The modeling supported it. The image took hold. Then people went looking for the ash, and that is where it gets awkward. If every forest burned, there should be charcoal everywhere in that layer. In many places, there is not enough of it. Worse, there is plant material in the layer that never burned at all. Some of it is not charred in the slightest. So the ground disagreed with the model. A second problem came from the falling glass itself. The first beads to fall heated the air, but they also filled it. A sky full of falling debris blocks some of its own heat. The later beads are shielded by the earlier ones. Belcher and colleagues then tested it directly. In 2015, they took real forest fuels and hit them with that level of heat. Some fuels ignite. Many just smolder or do nothing. So the current picture is messier and more interesting. Not one planet-wide firestorm. Enormous fires in some regions, nothing much in others. A patchwork, and this matters more than it sounds. A world that burns everywhere leaves no refuges. A patchy world leaves survivors. Keep that in mind for the last stage. 6 hours in. Now the ocean finally arrives. The impact dropped a mountain into shallow sea. The water had to go somewhere. In 2022, a team led by Molly Range simulated the whole thing. They modeled it from the first contact outward across the planet. The wave leaving the impact site was about 1.5 kilometers tall. Not 1.5 meters. Kilometers. That collapses fast. Waves always do. But it does not need to stay that tall to be catastrophic. It crossed the Gulf of Mexico and kept going. And here is the part that gets me. We can still find it. Under the state of Louisiana, buried under 1.5 kilometers of rock, there are ripples. Kinsland and colleagues imaged them in 2021. They used seismic scans that the oil industry had already collected. The ripples are about 600 meters apart. They are about 16 meters tall. 600 meters apart is roughly 6 football pitches. 16 meters tall is about a 5-story building. They are the largest ripples ever documented on Earth. Think about what a ripple is. It is the pattern water leaves in sand when it moves. You have made them yourself at a beach with your feet. These are the same thing, just made by a wave that could bury a city, frozen in place. Still there, under farmland. Could you outrun it? High ground works if you have high ground. Most coastlines do not, and the animals near that coast had no reason to move. Nothing in their experience said the sea was about to arrive. One day in, the fires are dying, the wave has passed. The survivors have made it through the worst day in the planet's history, and now the actual extinction begins. Here is the thing that decided it. It was not the size of the asteroid, it was what it landed on. The seabed at that spot was packed with sulfur. Vast beds of it laid down over millions of years. The impact turned that sulfur into gas and threw it upward, not into the sky you can see. Higher, into the still air above all weather. That matters, and here is why. Anything in the low sky gets rained out in days. Nothing rains up there. Once the haze is that high, it stays for years. A fine sulfur haze wrapped around the entire planet. It does one thing extremely well. It reflects sunlight back into space. So the sky goes dark, and it stays dark. We can measure how cold it got. Velicoop and colleagues did that in 2014. They read the temperature of the ancient sea surface out of the chemistry of the rock. The oceans cooled sharply. Years without a summer. Now follow what that does. Plants need light. In the dark, they stop. Everything that eats plants runs out. Then everything that eats those animals runs out. The food chain does not break in the middle. It collapses from the bottom. This is why size stopped being an advantage and became a death sentence. A large animal needs a large amount of food every single day. In a dark world, being big is the worst possible strategy. Now the last stage, and the part I actually want you to remember, who came through it. Look at the list and a pattern appears immediately. Small, almost everything that lived was small. Things that could burrow, things that lived in water, things that could eat almost anything. Seeds, roots, dead matter, insects. If you needed one specific food, you were finished. Now the detail that gives me chills. Birds survived. You know this. You see them daily. But look at which birds. Daniel Field and colleagues worked this out in 2018. The forests were gone, not for a season, for at least 1,000 years. And no tree-dwelling bird lineage crossed that boundary. None of them. Not one. Every bird alive today that lives in a tree is descended from a bird that lived on the ground. They went back up into the trees afterwards. The forests had to grow back first. Every songbird outside your window is descended from a survivor that was standing on dirt. And now the fact that changes the whole story. The killer was the sulfur in the rock. So a question follows immediately. What if it had landed somewhere else? Kunio Kaiho and Naga Ashima asked exactly that in 2017. They worked out how much of Earth's surface holds that much sulfur and buried oil and gas. The answer is about 13%. 13%. The other 87% of the planet would not have thrown up enough haze. Same asteroid, same speed, same size, same day. Land it almost anywhere else, and there is no long darkness. Kaiho's own summary is blunt. The chance of the mass extinction happening was about 13%. The dinosaurs did not lose to an asteroid. They lost to where it landed. So sit with the odds for a second. Roll that day again 100 times. In about 87 of them, the dinosaurs are fine. The darkness never comes. The forests hold. And the small burrowing things stay small burrowing things. There is no gap for anything else to grow into. You do not get primates. You do not get us. We are not the winners of that day. We are what grew in the hole it left. And there is one more thing. Go back to the beginning. 3 nights of a new star and nothing alive could read it. That is still the part I cannot shake. The warning was there. The information was there. It just landed on a planet with no one to interpret it. 66 million years later, that has changed. We drilled the crater. We read the season off a fish bone. We found the hour in a riverbed in North Dakota. We are the first thing on this planet that can look up and know what a moving light means. We are also the first thing that could do something about it. Go outside tonight and look up. Find a star, any star. Watch it for a moment. Everything you can see up there is fixed. Nothing is closing, and that is not luck. Somebody checked. We are the only species that has ever been able to say that.